This is Fuel.
Fuel for thought.
Fuel injected.
Fuel for your business.
These were the old rules to the game. You begin life at level E, unless you have family wealth, in which case you probably begin at A. When you first start work, you move to D, and then C2, promotion to C1, career takes off, and if you're lucky, you become B, unless you have a wealthy family and you stay in the A lane your entire life. I'm talking about demographics, the classic classification that people in advertising industry use to make sure that their clients' products were promoted to the appropriate societal group. Boxes are handy. Label boxes are even handier. The world of advertising and marketing has moved on considerably since the introduction of demographics over 50 years ago. At the start of the internet age, we all began to talk about psychographics, classifying consumers and customers based on cognitive attributes, interests, and lifestyles. Well, this was used with devastating effect by Steve Bannon, the air quotes genius behind the presidential campaign of Donald Trump. Using a blend of internet breadcrumb trails, Team Trump successfully eviscerated the US voting system and simplified it into, you're either one of us or one of them. What has become clear about the way we target consumers with anything from voting messages to toothpaste? We need to build another mousetrap. There are far too many variables, and I know plenty of left-leaning gun owners. I also know right-leaning voters that support abortion and don't believe in Christ. My point is that, as Vincent Vega in Pulp Fiction said, it's the little differences. How do the advertisers increase their chances of appealing to the right audience? And how can we leverage the technology we know already works to better affect change? My guest this week is an agent of that change. He's created a new classification system for the world of marketing based on core values and belief. I may own a gun, but I don't hunt animals. And if I gave up one of those beliefs, it would be the gun, because the protection of animals is one of my core values. Valuegraphics is the next iteration of consumer classification, and its CEO is David Allison. And he's here to spread the word and tell us how, in this age of nuances, your agency can identify the true believers in the value of your products or services. So welcome, David.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And hello to everybody out there who's listening and watching.
Thank you very much for turning up. And thanks for putting the time aside. And how are you doing at the moment? You okay?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I've had my first shot. You know, it's depending on when you're watching this. Hopefully you're watching this and the pandemic is long over. But we're in the middle of the vaccination rush at the moment. I've had my first shot. And, you feel like you just got a weight kind of falls off your shoulders when that happens.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. So when's your next one?
The way we're doing it here in Canada is they won't tell you that. So we're doing everybody gets a first one, and then they start the whole system all over again, and then everybody gets a second one. So we'll find out when it's my turn.
Well, best of luck anyway. I hope it goes soon. I've had my second one and I'm still not going out. So
I just can't wait. I can't wait to get on a plane and complain about business travel again. Remember how much we I hate it. The airports, the food's terrible. I want to complain about it again. I want to complain about travel again.
You want to be able to get in someone's face again.
Yeah. Bring on the lineups and the terrible food. I'm in. Let's do it.
Now, before we kick it off, it's an important premise of why Valuegraphics is going to be more useful than traditional demographics, because in so many shows, we've heard from highly respected kind of brand and marketing people about that word authenticity. And the consumers of today all seek out companies, products, and brands that they can identify with. And it was highlighted in a recent interview I did, where the guest was having building work carried out in his house by a company that was run by a guy that thought the pandemic was a hoax. And obviously, if he'd been a few years younger, the odds are good that the builder's belief system would have prevented him from winning work. And so, my point is that consumers are shopping by values now more than ever. So why is that?
Well, here's the thing. Consumers have always been shopping by values. We just didn't know what was going on. The scientists have known for a very long time. If you look at human behavior science, all the different fields of human behavior science point to the fact that values determine everything we do, that all of our decisions and behaviors and all of our emotions and feelings and reactions, they all come from some kind of comparison that we're doing internally around what do we care about the most. And let's get more of that. And what might hurt those things we care about? And let's run away from that stuff. So all we've done is taken decades of work that's happened in neuroscience and in psychology and in sociology. And we built the world's first database that's segmentable for any target audience that can identify the shared values of those people, so that advertisers can, and the agencies working with them can say, well, gee, if my target audience cares about these things, why don't we try and connect the dots between the brand and those things? And that will be more attractive and magnetic than just shooting off and hoping that you hit something based on a demographic stereotype about, need I say it, millennials and avocado toast.
But I mean, so I mean, was this basically? I mean, have we created this by the invention, through the invention of the internet? I mean, has that enabled this to happen?
Well, it certainly has accelerated it. I mean, I think demographics, we'll talk about psychographics in a minute, but
Sure.
demographics had a role in society a few hundred years ago before technology came along and wiped that out. I mean, there was a reason why young men in small villages in medieval France had to behave in a certain way. They had a certain job that they had to do in order to make sure that their village survived. And when you go back even further, it was about preservation of the species. The old folks had a thing they were supposed to do, and the young folks had a thing they were supposed to do. Rich people, poor people, men, women, we all had jobs to do to make sure that we just kind of moved along and prospered. But along comes technology, and suddenly men don't have to behave in a certain way. Nobody acts their age anymore. Women are not being, pigeonholed into a certain set of roles that are determined by their biology like they used to, at least not to the same degree. We got work to do there. And but we can largely curate whatever kind of life we want today. And yet in our boardrooms, we still think that those old-fashioned demographic categories mean something, that somehow knowing your target audience is women who are 18 to 24 and earn $50,000 a year is like what you need to understand in order to motivate them to engage with you, or to buy a product, or to sign up for a service, or whatever it is you're trying to do.
Sure. But I mean, I think, the point to it is that if your only tool is a hammer, then, everything is a nail. I mean, there's only one way you can address it. So, I mean, you are giving agencies and brands the opportunity to, to go a bit deeper and to use a bit of more of a sort of fine-pointed tool. But I mean, your agency you've got an agency background, right, from Canada, in Canada.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started right out of university. I started working in an agency as a baby suit, as a blazer. I was an account coordinator, and then worked my way up to wearing full suits to work and actually managing accounts and being an account director. And some point along there, I decided that I thought maybe I was a copywriter. And so I switched agencies because nobody would take me seriously as a copywriter when you've been a suit for 3 years or 4 years at one firm. You have to go somewhere else. And then became a creative director. And then I struck out on my own and started my own firm. And that lasted for a good 10 years, and sold that off about 5 years ago and started working on this. So yeah, I mean, I'm steeped. I'm from an ad agency background, back when we had advertising agencies, and they didn't have to be called things like digital consulting setup firm, something. I was a pure good old ad agency where we made headlines for print ads and, the honest stuff.
But you've got the T-shirt, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So, I mean, with your agency background in there and all your experience, I mean, what led you to the point of deciding that Valuegraphics had a sort of a future there? What got you to there?
It's a fascinating story. So the company that I just sold, that I built up on my own for 10 years, we were a branding, marketing, advertising agency, strategy firm, whatever you had to call it in those days. And we focused specifically on real estate developments, big, large scale condominium towers, resorts, master plan communities all over the world. And every time we sat down to work with a client, as it is with any brand or any category, we got a description of the target audience. And the description of the target audience was demographics and some psychographics, like this is their third home they're buying, or they're trading up from an older condo or whatever. And we'd run around, spend $1 million and talk to folks and say, you should come and buy these condos. You should move into this town. You should buy one of these resort units. Now, the nice thing about the real estate development business is that it's got a fairly short turnaround time. So it's unlike brand work where it just goes on and on and on and on. You finish, you sell all the, let's say, units in a condo tower. And then 2 years later, you go to the ribbon cutting and you look around and you see who's in the room. So we had this like sort of direct feedback loop all the time about who came, who showed up after us spending $1 million on a demographic. And you know the answer to this story, it was never the people in that room who we thought we had been talking to. Like, who are all these people? They don't match the demographics. I mean, yay, we were successful. We sold this stuff, but I don't know who these people are. This is not who we were talking to. But you know what? We were talking to those people. We just didn't know it. We were accidentally talking to them. While we were all running around thinking we were being smart about demographics and psychographics, we were sending out some signals around particular values. We were saying this building is going to be really great for anybody who has a huge belief system around environmentalism or personal growth or ambition or status or social standing or family or friends or whatever. There's 56 possible human values that drive our decisions and behaviors. So we were transmitting those value signals. And this is what our research has now confirmed. And we were seeing then in real life, values are agnostic to demographics. So the reason we didn't recognize anyone in that room is because what they had in common was a set of values that had attracted them to this value that's what we call our value proposition, this value proposition. It wasn't a demographic that we had attracted. It was a group of people who shared similar values. And as soon as we figured that out, we were like, wait a minute, this doesn't have to be just for real estate. Why isn't this for banks and consumer packaged goods and vacation rentals and everything else you can possibly imagine? We should be talking to people, figuring out a way to capture that set of values in advance so that we're not running around wasting our time talking to demographics and psychographics. Nobody is their demographic. Nobody is their psychographic, but what they are is their value graphic.
Right. And so, I mean, presumably this, that was your aha moment, you know, after during the property sales and stuff, you were able to kind of put some theories to the test and sort of get it to
you know what? No, I'm not that smart. So I mean, I saw this happening over and over and over again. It was like, yay, we were successful. So whatever we just did the last time, let's just do that again. It was after I sold the company, I started writing another book. I'd written 2 or 3 books about real estate development marketing. I started writing another one. And this one was demographically focused. I was trying to figure out why we couldn't get baby boomers and generation why we couldn't get millennials and the baby boomers to live in condo towers together. Why were we just building condo towers for boomers and other ones for millennials? And by the way, if anybody, so I was going to write this book and we've done this study and I registered boomerennials.com, which is still available. If anybody wants that, I'm happy to sell the boomerennials.com, because our theory was that people are going to live in a building. It's not really about, I don't want to live in a building just because everyone else is the same age as me or makes the same amount of money. We knew that wasn't true from looking at community planning and neighborhood planning. Diverse communities are the happy, healthy communities. Monoculture communities, everybody hates those and they have terrible stats around those. Sure. So why are our buildings monoculture? So anyway, we started doing this study specifically around real estate. And that's when the light bulb went on, when people started saying that they would pay 15 or 20% more than market value to live in a building with people who shared their values, who saw the world the same way they did. They didn't give a 2 hoots at how rich they were, how old they were, whether they had kids or not. None of that mattered. In fact, we had people saying, I don't want to live in a monoculture building. I don't want to live in an age ghetto. And we were hearing that from both sides of the age spectrum and all sides of the income spectrum. And nobody wants to be pigeonholed based on their external characteristics. I don't want to live around a bunch of people just like me. I want to live around a bunch of people just like me in here, not white middle-aged dude like me. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who have the same things that they worry about and the same things that they care about. Those are the people I want to be with. So that's how we should be targeting. We should be targeting based on those groups of people who share similar values. And now we can. 500,000 surveys later, I make it sound like that was easy. 500,000 surveys from around the world, and now we can do that.
Okay, well, I just want to get the nomenclature right. Okay, so I mean, is there a difference between a value and a belief?
Yes.
Right.
I guess it depends who you're talking to, but in the world of sociology, which is where our research and our data set lives, we define values as something that the core human value has to be something that's important enough that it's a major influence in how you live your life. It's one of the tools you use to make every decision about everything that happens to you all day long. You're standing in a grocery store and you may not even know you're doing it, but you're looking at 2 cans of soup and you have ambition as one of your biggest values, the things that you used to run your life, somehow you're going to be consciously or subconsciously making a decision between these two cans of soup based on which one seems to be giving you the most sense of ambition. It's going to be the best for my ambition. Maybe one feels a little fancier. It's an extra 50 cents, but it's got a fancy looking label. You're like, yeah, that's the one. I'm an ambitious guy. I want the fancy soup. So you may not even know you're doing that. It's not necessarily something we can map out and say it's part of a CX or a UX. It's just the way you live, because humans can't, we're biologically hardwired like this. We chase what we care about and run away from anything that might harm that.
Yeah, I think that's it's a fantastic terminology that you've started to use as well, because I mean, I love how you describe sort of the values as part of our operating system, our OS. And obviously the more we know about our audience, the better the chances of success. But I mean, how important is the creative process in this sort of new paradigm? I mean, isn't it? I mean, aren't you eliminating part of the creativity from the advertising process?
Oh, absolutely not. In fact, it's exactly the opposite. Here's what happens. Our sociological data set will come to a particular situation. Let's say we have a target audience of people who we're trying to sell Swiss Army knives to, because I happen to have one sitting here.
Wow.
Well, I'm at my cottage, right? I mean, everybody has one at the cottage.
You really are a Boy Scout, aren't you?
For when you're going to be out there being a Swiss Army guy, like you need one. Like, so you just never know when someone's going to call and go, is there a Swiss Army guy around here somewhere? And you can say yes. Well, you're a Leatherman.
Let's compare tools.
Swiss Army knife, Leatherman. I think you win. You win the Geek Award on this show. So we're going to try and sell Swiss Army knives. I don't even remember what we were talking about anymore. It's all carried up on
creativity.
Tools there. Creativity. So what our data set will be able to identify is for the people who are going to buy these, who are attracted to this as an idea and want to buy this for in Germany, let's say, right. The most important thing in their life is family. And the second most important thing in their life is personal growth. And the third most important thing in their life is, I don't know, let's say personal responsibility. So those are 3 of the 56 possible values that could come to the top for any target audience anywhere in the world. Now, the creative team has suddenly got the world's best brief. I can't tell you what you need to say to sell this Swiss Army knife, because that's going to have all kinds of other influences. What have you tried before? What are the competitors doing? How is this being positioned by the client? What is the manufacturer of these Swiss Army knives trying to accomplish in terms of long-term brand goals? But what I can tell you is that the way to trigger purchase with that target audience is with those 3 values. So go and be creative and come back with answers that are about those 3 things: personal growth, personal responsibility, and family. So it might be that you come back with a campaign that says, nothing makes you more responsible as a human being. Nothing makes you more capable of facing the future and whatever comes at you than knowing you're prepared for every situation. And whether it's at your cottage or at the office, if you could just have one thing in your pocket that was going to make you the guy who can solve every problem that comes along, wouldn't that be a good thing to have? Well, I'd like to show you what a Swiss Army knife can do. So there's a terrible radio commercial off the top of my head, but you see the point.
Yeah, I'm sold.
Yeah, you can see the point. For someone who values personal growth and personal responsibility, to be able to, how you talk into that is what the creative becomes about. Instead of randomly sitting around and going, oh my God, it's got to be, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, we have to show the client something. And I'm going to say Swiss Army knives are about environmentalism. These guys gotta like the woods, or why would they want one of these things? So let's do a whole campaign about environmentalism and being out in the woods and hiking and camping and being Mr. Mountain Man, and why you need to have one of these with you. That's gotta ring the right bells. Well, no, it's not. And we can tell you with more statistical accuracy than you need for a PhD that what will ring the bells is to tell them this is going to make them more personally responsible for what goes on in their life. It's going to help them grow as a person because personal growth is important to them. And somehow this is going to relate back to having a more beneficial life that involves their family. I'm not sure how you get that family piece in there, but there's the creative piece. The creative team on Swiss Army knives in this hypothetical situation, they need to go away and crack that. Now, here's the beauty for an agency's perspective. Anybody who's ever worked in an agency knows that one of the most frustrating things in the world is coming up with a great idea, makes tons of sense to everybody internally. And then you go to the client presentation and you show it to them, and their response is, I don't know. What else you got? Instead of being able to stand up and say, listen, based on extensive research from the Valuegraphics database, 500,000 surveys from around the world that measure what everybody cares about most, we've discovered that the people who are going to buy this make all their decisions because of these three things. That's why we're going to show you this creative. Now, some client can still stand up and say, my wife doesn't really like that very much. And go, cool. If it's your money, you want to spend it because your wife doesn't like it, that's great. We have 500,000 people from around the world, or your wife. You decide which focus group you want to use. It gives you the factual underpinning to be able to stand up with your creative and say, here's why we're doing this. It's a friction reducer. That relationship you have with your client is now just so much smoother because you all agree in advance based on this data that these are the things we got to talk about. So your job as an agency becomes talking about those few things in the most amazing way possible.
Well, it's funny you say that, because one of the things that that's come out through all of the podcasts that we've been doing has been the fact that brands have to be more agile, that brands have to be more empathetic towards their audience, all that sort of thing. And just based on what you were just saying just then, I can see that there will be occasions when Valuegraphics would actually challenge the kind of some of the core values that the CEO thinks are important to his brand, when they're not actually. You may have identified some new things. So I think there's an element of discovery as well to to your products, right?
Oh, for sure. And sometimes it's difficult to get up and say, here's what we found out about your target audience. And it's not really super aligned with what you've been saying so far. I can think of one case with a major international clothing brand that we did some work for, where we identified the primary value for their entire target audience in several countries around the world where they were operating that they had us profile for. The primary value is family. And that just blew their minds. They're like, we're supposed to have a ball pit like IKEA, and what does that mean? I said, I don't know what it means. What do you think it means? That's the point here. This is the question. I'm here to identify the questions you should focus on. I'm not here to tell you what the answers are, because I don't know your business and I never will. But I can tell you with more statistical accuracy than you need for that Harvard PhD, that you better figure out how to connect the dots between your positioning and family. Now, it might be that your clothing has something to do with helping the people who wear it feel like they're better moms and dads and brothers and sisters. I don't know what it is. That's your gig, is to go figure that out. But they were definitely scratching their heads. And according to the folks I know inside that company, who they're continuing to scratch their heads about it. And they're starting to find ways to talk about it and weave it back. And to do what the successful companies who we've worked with who embrace Valuegraphics, they kind of start to weave it into their DNA and use it as a way to test themselves. This new initiative the CEO wants to come up with, how do we tie that back to family? How is that going to be present in this situation? And now our new social media firms on board, and they're starting to generate themes and storylines and ideas and content. How can we get them to start thinking about what that might mean in terms of family? And all the different things that family can mean. And, we have to remember that today, family isn't necessarily mom, dad, the kids in a house in the suburbs with a minivan and a white picket fence. There's all kinds of family out there. And maybe the answer lies in exploring the kinds of family that are that we're talking about here. But being able to focus like this and provide a North Star for the creative team, for the brand, for the CEO, for the stakeholders from all directions, and say, if we're here to try and help our customers align with us and engage with us and feel good about being part of our family, in a different sense of the word than we've just been talking about, then this is the stuff we need to be about. That's kind of what Valuegraphics is here to do. It's not kind of, it's exactly what Valuegraphics is here to do.
Yeah, I can see that, that it will create or it will generate a sort of a, another level of enlightenment for the creative process. The reason I asked the question about whether it's going to stifle creativity is because obviously, some creative departments still rely on the old gut instinct and stuff like that. And I think that, given the situation that we're all living in now, where money isn't as free and easy as it used to be, then you need to try and reduce the odds of something going wrong. So I can see how that could work.
No, it's also, I'm just going to cut in on you there for a
Yeah,
moment,
sure.
because it's in some respects it's the anti-data. Because here's what I think's been going on with data and analytics and all this kind of stuff. We've been collecting it like a drunken sailor, just like piling up as many analytic bits and pieces of information as we possibly can. Demographic, shopping patterns, eyeball tracking around websites. I mean, we know every time our customers burp, we've got it in a database somewhere, and we can track it back to their age and their income and all these things. But here's the problem. I mean, that stuff's still, it's cool, it's useful, it's interesting. Demographics help us describe a target audience, but that's about it. Just like, who are these people? How do you describe them? That's about all it can do.
Right.
Psychographics tell you how these people have behaved so far. How many of my product do they own? Are they big fans of my competitors? Are they loyal to me? Are they happy about I mean, all that kind of stuff. But all of that's just a record of history, because as soon as you write that stuff down, it's now historical. So we got a descriptive tool, and we have a history recording tool, demographics and psychographics. Neither one helps you understand how to get them to change behavior tomorrow. Because the only thing that will make someone change their behavior is if you understand what they care about more than anything else in their life.
Right.
Because you got to talk to them about that, and we'll activate them. That's where the value graphics piece comes in. So I don't want anybody to think I'm saying you shouldn't be using those old systems anymore, but let's use them for what they're good for. Demographics are a descriptor, psychographics are a recording device. Value graphics are how you activate people to do the thing you want them to do next. And you need all three. It's a stack, or a three-legged stool, or whatever you want to call it.
Right. Well, I just want to cover, just for a short while, the topic of greenwashing, because our sponsor, the Advertist, this week reported about the German e-commerce platform, and I think I shared this with you, about Zalando, was allowing its customers to now shop by values and to seek out products that identify with causes that they care about. And so, I mean, isn't there a danger in taking values too far with the idea of brands just literally greenwashing their products? I mean, can the system be rigged in that kind of way?
I don't think consumers are stupid enough to, I mean, if we're really talking about greenwashing, then my definition of that is people who are running around saying, we're green, we're so green, we're crazy green, we're like Kermit the Frog green, and then they're actually not. So if a brand is standing up and saying, we're all about green, and you can choose which of these various, green sustainable charities or not-for-profits you want your percentage of your receipt to go to, that's great. I mean, it's helping out. But from a brand's perspective, here's some interesting information. I shared this with you a little earlier.
Yes.
If we're talking about the EU, environmentalism is one of the 56 things that's powerful enough to be called a core human value. So there are some people in every market in the world who will be motivated by an environmental message. But for the EU, out of those 56 possible values, it's 37th on the list. So there's 36 other values that are way more powerful and way more of a magnet for a brand to be relying on. So, I mean, 37th isn't terrible. It still gives you 25% of the population. So basically, what that means is, in the EU, 25% of the population have environmentalism as a powerful enough value that it will be a draw. If a brand stands up and goes, we're green, 25% of the population will go, oh. And as long as you meet all their other requirements, it's the right price and all those other things, that'll work for 25%. But if you think it's working for everybody, you're barking up the wrong tree.
Right.
Because it's not. The 75% of the population of the EU is like, yeah, environmentalism, whatever.
Wow, that's amazing. I guess going to the pub's got to be up there as one of their.
I actually pulled, because I thought we might get into this. So I pulled the data for the UK versus Europe.
Oh man, excellent.
So
This is going to be
this
interesting.
is just like the top 10 most powerful
Okay, yeah,
values.
go for it. Go for
right?
it.
So pretty closely aligned, but the places where the UK is out ahead of the EU are personal growth. There's four of them: personal
Personal
growth,
growth.
employment security, health and well-being, and wealth. So on those four values, the UK has leading indicators as the compared to the EU, where it's still in their top 10, but it's just not as important to a large percentage of the population as it is in the UK. So this is like value graphics using your fists on a piano here. But it's, if you were a brand in the UK, or let's say you're a brand from the EU trying to break into the UK marketplace, and all you did was start trying to figure out how to connect the dots between your position, your offering, your initiatives, and personal growth, employment security, health and well-being, and wealth, you'd be doing good. Those are four things that I can stand up here and say for sure are more important in the UK than they are in the EU. So give me a brand. Let's say packaged goods company selling toothpaste.
Okay.
So you need to say, how is your toothpaste going to help me be a better version of myself tomorrow than I am today? That's personal growth. You got to tell me how it's going to contribute to my health and well-being. There's no, chemicals in this thing, and it's going to make my smile brighter, which makes me feel better about myself and improves my well-being and my sense of, it's good for my emotional well-being. Personal growth, we kind of skipped over that. This toothpaste, it's good for your, it's going to make you a better version of yourself. I mean, I guess at a very superficial level, it's going to make your smile whiter and brighter, and that's going to make you a better version of yourself, right?
It's going to advance my career as well.
Yeah, and wealth. How's it going to connect to wealth for you?
Cheap.
It's sorry?
It's cheap.
It's cheap, or maybe it's super expensive. Maybe this is the platinum toothpaste for those of us who can afford the very best. And therefore you're triggering health and well-being, but also my desire to have as much wealth as I can. Maybe I can't afford to be the wealthy guy in all aspects of my life, but darn it, I can have the best toothpaste in the world because I'm at least that wealthy.
No Porsche, but nice teeth.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe there's a decent, the beginning of a decent strategy right there for a high-end toothpaste brand from the EU trying to break into the UK based on a Valuegraphics reading. Now, demographics need to layer on top of that. Who are we talking to? Are they housewives? Well, then a slightly different version, whatever a housewife is these days, a slightly different version of that will be necessary.
Sure.
And if we're talking to people who have dentures, there's a psychographic fact, then we're going to have to think about our toothpaste in a slightly different way again. So all those other external variables are still important. How is this brand represented in the EU? So brand history and what it already means in the marketplace has to be figured into this as well. The creative team's got a lot of work left to do here. But what we can do for that creative team is say, you need to be focused on these few things. Now go and be the most creative people in the world around these few things, and you're going to be successful.
I get it. Well, I mean, okay, so I just want to circle back on something that you said just before about, demographics and psychographics. So, I mean, if demographics identify the who, psychographics identify the what, value graphics are the why.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then the internet obviously then completes the puzzle with when and where. So you've got who, what, why, when, where. And now, without giving away any of your kind of secret sauce, I mean, how can agencies build your system into their presentations to make them more effective and compelling?
Well, there's a few ways they can do that now, and very shortly there'll be a few more. So let's talk about what's available now. The first one is absolutely free, and they don't have to do anything except start asking the right questions when they do research with consumers and prospects on behalf of their clients. Right now, when we send out studies through SurveyMonkey, or we do mall intercepts, or we do phone interviews, or any of those techniques, we tend to ask two kinds of questions. Demographics: how old are you? Are you male? Are you female? How much money do you make? Blah, 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 blah. As if that's going to help us somehow. I'm not sure how, but maybe it's good to collect anyway. and Psychographics. Do you like my product? How much do you like my product? Will you want more of my product? What will it take you to buy more of my product? How happy are you as a consumer of my product? That's the stuff we want to know about. Who are you? And what do you think about me? That's basically what we ask. So if you just ask these three questions, we start to get into what they're all about, which is the piece we haven't been doing. Not just what they're all about as it relates to a particular product or service, but what are they all about? What do they wake up in the morning afraid of and happy about? So we came up with three questions. We just call these the three magic questions. So the first one is, why do you get up and go to work every day? If you listen to enough people answer that, you're going to start seeing some patterns. It's going to be about their family. It's going to be about their ambition. It's going to be about the environment. It's going to be about something. And you'll start to see everybody will have different ways of talking about it. And it's going to be a really blunt instrument you're building here. But why do you go to work every day is a great question to start asking. The second one is, you just won the lottery. Why would you give half of it away? You're starting to, again, get into what's the deep-rooted emotional reasons why you do stuff. You're going to give away half your lottery winnings, buddy. Why would you do that?
I love that question.
Then the third one is, you get to write a letter to yourself from 10 years ago. What would you say and why? Now you see what the pattern is here. It's always about the why are you doing these things? It's Simon Sinek's find the why, but we're doing it now with quantifiable data. So in this case, we're not. We're just saying, here's some questions you can use to get yourself to the why these people live their lives the way they do. So that's starting to give you a very elementary sense of value graphics. On the other end of the spectrum, you can hire my company and pay us $1 squillion, and we will tell you with precision, plus or minus 3.5%, 95% level of accuracy for 180 countries in the world. We'll tell you what your target audience cares about. It's not for everybody. That's why we have those questions. It's not as expensive as you might think, but it costs $1.
It's not a squillion.
It's not as well, it's maybe half a squillion. And then in the middle, if you're in Canada and the United States, my current book, which is called We Are All the Same Age Now, it's been out for 3 or 4 years. There's a series of 10 questions in there that you can throw out to the world through SurveyMonkey or whatever you want to use. And those 10 questions will help you identify which of 10 archetypes in the Canadian-US data set are most applicable to your target audience. And then there's a whole chapter in the book on that archetype where we just tell you everything we know about this whole archetype. My new book, which will be out probably around the end of the year, don't hold me to that, we're going to do the same thing for the entire freaking planet. So we'll have 15 questions, and it'll help you identify which of 15 archetypes are the most accurate for your target audience. Now, that's still not super accurate because there's potentially tens of thousands of different profiles inside our database. These are the 15 biggest ones. So at least you're starting to use value graphics, even if it's the rough and ready version, for the price of a book. Or for $0, just start asking people some of those questions about what do they care about, and stop. Yeah, sure, carry on asking them how old they are, but really think about that. What's it matter? Because someone's 18 to 24, you're going to do something different than if they're 25 to 37? Like is that a different kind of adjective you'll put into the headline? Let me give you a couple. I know I'm rambling and I tend to do this. I apologize, but I'll give you a couple data points to show you how ineffective demographic profiling is. So we got these 500,000 surveys around the world. And the cool thing about this is it's a random stat rep. So it's an exact miniature replica of the population of the entire planet, which is what makes it so crazy accurate. So when we go in there and pull out just the millennials, for example, what we find out about the millennials around all the 436 different variables that we've measured is accurate for all millennials on Earth, or just the millennials in the United States, or any place that we've gone and segmented them out. So millennials only agree with each other on those 436 things, the 56 core values, and then a bunch of other stuff, wants, needs, expectations, that kind of stuff. So 436 metrics, 500,000 data set, just the millennials, they only agree with each other about 15% of the time. So that means if you're targeting millennials, you're going to be wrong 85% of the time. If you're spending $1 targeting millennials, 85 cents are wasted. Now, if you target millennials who are men who agree with each other 10% of the time, and who earn $50,000 a year, who agree with each other 13.5% of the time, you're getting a group of people that's bigger and bigger and bigger, who all agree with each other hardly at all. And then you're going to go spend $1 million and waste somewhere between 80 and 90% of that because they're just not going to agree with each other on whatever it is you throw at them.
Wow.
That's not a really good ROI. But as soon as you start talking to people with a value graphic profile, we get those agreement levels. They're up in the 70s, 80s, 90s. So that dollar is now giving you a 70 cent on the dollar
Basically,
effectiveness ratio. Even if we're half wrong, which we're not, we're plus or minus 3.5% wrong. But let's say for some weird reason, we translated everything in and out of the wrong language. I don't know, who knows? Some kind of crazy thing happened. We all smoked too much dope one day when we were doing data analysis or whatever. Half wrong, and we were still only able to get you up to like a 30 or 40% ROI compared to the 10 or 15% ROI you're at now. It's still amazing. I mean, what do you got to lose? Just understand a little bit more about your target audience, and the effectiveness of all your efforts will go through the roof.
Man, I tell you what, you can quote some stats as well, can't you? That's amazing. That's really good.
It's been a long time working with all these graphs and charts and stuff. Yeah, it's coming to me. It's getting there.
Now, as we both found out, you don't need to have a dog in the fight to get bitten. Now, I'm not a voter in the US elections, and neither are you, but the outcome kind of affected both of us back in 2016. With the withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord, the granting of drilling rights for the Keystone Pipeline and all that sort of stuff, and coal mining, if value graphics were adopted by a political party, how might that change the way that politicians behave?
Oh, I mean, my gosh.
Would it make them more accountable to their voters?
You're getting into something that is deeply disturbing for me. I know some politicians, and they're lovely people, but one of their stock and trade techniques and tools is to stand up and say, the values of my citizenry are this. My constituents value this and that and the other thing. And then the next day they get up and say, actually, the people of this country value this stuff over this stuff. They're talking out their asses because they don't know. What they're hearing is a very weird little subset of a subset of a subset, which are called lobbyists and political advisors, telling them what the values are. And that today we're trying to get policy X enacted. So we better say that the values are this stuff. And tomorrow we're trying to get policy Y enacted. And so it'd be really great if the values are actually these things instead. This is a dream. Imagine if every politician, when they announced their candidacy, was handed a statistically accurate list of the values of their constituents.
That's what I'm held. Yeah,
they were held accountable to that list. And there's like, this is the stuff your people care about, and you're here in a democratic world to represent what your people care about. So this is your scorecard. You're going to get marked on this stuff, and if you get a failing grade on these things, you're out. You don't pass. No passing go, no collecting your pension, and no ambassadorial role for you in the future. It's all up to the data. Now, this will never work because every political party is based on being able to bob and weave, and unfortunately, so much of it has to do with who's handing them cash. Which lobby group is helping them out and therefore feels like they should have some help in the return. And so you can't do everything based on some pure reckoning of what the people you're here to represent care about in our current political system. But what a wonderful world it would be if you could.
Wouldn't it? Just, I mean, that's why I asked the question, because, you know, the amount of times I've lost count of the amount of times you've seen on TV when, you know, somebody sort of in the US stands up and says, well, the American people want this, the American people want that, you know, and it's like, well, actually, statistically, only half the American people only want this. And then beyond that, you don't even know. You've got no way of proving it.
Even that, they're relying on political polls. So a political poll, let's see, in the next week, we're going to start talking about policy X. We better get a poll. So they hire one of their favorite pollsters who goes out and starts phoning people during dinner and talking to people who will talk to them during dinner and on the phone. I mean, who even answers their phone anymore? Or people who will who will respond to an email thing that gets sent out. I mean, that information is so flawed, at which we've seen. Look at the polls predicting who's going to win these elections and how off they were.
Sure.
These methodologies where you just talk to the people who are willing to talk to you, randomly during weird situations, and then add up, a few hundred people's responses and go, well, the American people want this. No, that's not true. But let's just not, it doesn't have to be America. The French people, the Ukrainian people, this is happening all over the world in the most well-meaning countries with the most well-meaning governments, because there isn't a way to understand, what do we care about today? What does the human race want? And this is leading into the thing that generally makes me cry a bit when I talk about this. The whole world right now is so divisive and so broken up, and so we're fighting about so many things, from refugees to mass migrations, to world hunger, to disease, to global warming, to politics. There's just no end of problems. And so many of them are because we don't understand each other, and we don't know what the other side is all about. We don't see the similarities. The biggest problem we have is that we've changed so rapidly over the last couple of hundred years. What humans are today and what we care about is so greatly different than it was a few hundred years ago, before technology came. And as we discussed at the beginning, started to change who we could be. But the institutions that we've created to serve us, they have not changed. Democracy, politics, religion, banking, finance, education, these things are changing at this glacial pace, and we're way up here. We've become something else. We're out of alignment with our reality. Our values and our reality are out of alignment. And the only way we're going to get back in alignment is if we have an empirical data set to help us understand, where are we? What do we care about today? And otherwise, it's left to the politicians to make stuff up about what we care about.
Make it up. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was very, very passionately put as well, David. Thank you very much.
It's what drives us. I mean, we're here to make a buck. We got to pay the mortgage and all that kind of stuff. But when I'm dead and gone, there's already conversations going about what happens to this database, because I believe that it has the power to at least contribute to making the world a little less fractious and divisive. And I say big cliche things like to healing this poor old planet of ours on so many levels. If we could all just understand what each other cares about and act accordingly, whether that's in business or politics or education or anything, how could it not be a better world than it is right now?
Well, okay, the 56 values, the 56 core values. How do you collect those? I mean, without giving away anything, any special technical.
Happy to talk about it. So we started with a list of 40 core human values that come from various sociological indexes that already have been in existence and been used by academics for a very, very long time. Things like the World Values Index, the Bhutan Gross Domestic Happiness Index, and so on, so on, so on.
Right.
So we had a list of 40 that everybody in the sociological world says, yeah, that's them. Those are the 40. There's a little bit of argument about this one, that one, and the other one, but I mean, basically everybody's on board with those 40. And then because we've built the largest and first data set that maps with this level of statistical accuracy and this volume of input, the first one in the world, the first one in history, we actually found an extra 16. So it's kind of like finding extra pyramids in Egypt. It's like, whoa, hold on a minute. There's a whole bunch more on this list that nobody else had seen because they didn't ask enough people. Well, we did. We asked enough people. And suddenly, for example, morality is showing up. Morality is a value. And now I just finished writing a chapter in my new book on the Middle East, and morality figures very, very importantly there. It's the second most important value in that entire region, not religion, morality. So I talked to some folks at a really wonderful ethnographic research firm there called Wellspring. And I was put in touch with them by my friends at Ogilvy and Mather. And they were explaining to me how morality figures into pretty much every aspect of life. Just the very fact that everybody talks about, and doesn't just talk about, but lives in a way that's about getting to the right place in the right way, doing things that are good, not for just yourself, but for everybody around you. And of course, there's corruption and terrible stuff going on. But generally speaking, as a culture, the expectation is that you're not going to do anything unless it's being done for the right reasons, in the right way, is respectful of everyone else. In other words, in the most moral way possible. And they had all kinds of wonderful anecdotes and examples for me that you'll have to buy the next book at the end of the year to hear about. But that's an example of morality showing up as a new value that we didn't see until we started asking enough people in the Middle East and Africa and China. Those are the three regions of the world where morality shows up, but nowhere near as importantly as it does in the Middle East. In Africa and China, it's, I can't remember, it was somewhere down around 15, 20, somewhere like that in terms of how it ranks out. But the number 2 value in all of the Middle East, it's fascinating. And I was speaking there a while ago. I was up on stage, and it's weird to be up in front of a bunch of people who are not like you, where you feel like the outsider, and saying, well, here's what I know about you guys. And just hope that you're not being offensive or saying something that someone's going to not like. And you get off a stage when you're speaking, everybody who's ever spoken knows this. And half a dozen people want to come over and say hi. They were too shy to say something and put their hands up at the end of your talk. So I had these women come towards me wearing, full coverings. All I could see was their eyes. And one of them was holding my book. And I was like, uh-oh, maybe I said something bad here. What's going on? And they came over and said, first off, it's very important that you're here. Thank you. We rely on demographics too much in this part of the world, and we need these messages to be heard. And secondly, you shouldn't worry about your finding around morality because you pinned it. We're taught from childhood. It has nothing to do with religion. There are people here who are not religious at all, but we all believe that getting to the right place in the right way is the only way to live. It's who we are. So you did it. So I kind of floated back to my hotel room after that. And I'll finish that with one quick little story. I was checking out that day. I was in Dubai and going to Abu Dhabi to do some more speaking there. And there had been a room service waiter who had been bringing me my food for the last couple of days while I was kind of getting over jet lag and getting ready to give that speech. And it was the last time I ordered a sandwich, and it was getting packed up and ready to go. And guy comes up, I can't remember his name, it's terrible. Someone from the embassy had advised me that it would be a good idea to bring some kind of little token Canadian gifts with me. So I had these little Canadian maple sugar candies. It was a package no bigger than this, maybe 5 little candies in it. And I said, thank you so much for looking after me while I've been here. His eyes got as big as saucers, and he left the room. 20 minutes later, bang, bang, bang on the door. I open the door, and the entire room services team is standing there. They've all had one. And they said, nobody ever thanks us. It means a lot. And it's the right thing for us to come and say goodbye and to tell you that that meant a lot to us. And they'd signed a card, and they said, we hope you come back and visit us again. But the key sentence there, it's the right thing for us to come and say thank you. That really made it come true. So there we go. I mean, it's 2 little anecdotes, but morality in the Middle East, I'm a believer. The data is correct. I saw it in real life.
That's a great story. That is a good story, and I don't want to just blow straight past it. But so how often do you need to hear that? What's the tipping point for something to become a value? I mean, how many times do you have to? I mean, is there a point at which you go, oh, that's now become a value? That's gone from just a general thing that people sometimes talk about into a true value. I mean, what's the actual tipping point there?
I can't tell you what the exact number is, just because I'm not that smart. I have a statistician that I work with who is based out of a university in New Zealand, and it's his job to do the number crunching and all that kind of heavy duty.
But there's like a plimsoll line that it goes over. Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you that we don't report out on a value for a particular target audience unless it's at minimum 65% acceptance of that value within that target audience. That's the cutoff point for us. So it needs to be well over 50% of the population of a population. And if we're using the word target audience and population interchangeably, so a population or an audience, it has to be something that's important to at least 65% of them before it becomes useful and interesting to us. But at what point did morality, for example, start to appear on our radar as something we have to pay attention to? I mean, that's a fairly easy one, because when it shows up as the number 2 value for an entire region, there's 9 regions of the world, and an entire region is going, yeah, put us down for morality. That's a pretty clear particularly clear example, but there's some kind of smarty pants mathematical stuff behind that when those other 14 sort of crept onto the list. But yeah, it was pretty exciting to see.
That
some
is
of these
that is
things.
amazing. There is
I mean,
amazing.
environmentalism is another good story, right? I mean, that's only recently become a value. It's been a concern, a belief, a focus for people for quite some time. But when it starts to impact people's decision making to the point it does now, that's when it becomes a value. I think that value probably would not have appeared in our research 10 years ago as being important enough as a determinant of behavior to be called a value. And now it is. That's a hopeful, lovely thought.
That is, I mean, if I'm just going to top line this whole thing here, I mean, would you now say that where politicians are as far as, and where companies are in terms of caring about looking after the environment and stuff like that, I mean, is that now that's something that is now a thing, that companies need to be incredibly aware of?
Well, companies and politics, there are systems that respond to inputs like money and shopping patterns and votes. And so they don't do anything until there's a majority of people who are saying, this is what we want you to do in one way or another, voting with their money, voting with their votes,
Sure.
voting with their voices.
Or cancelling, as they like to say now.
So the fact that even the most reluctant have started to embrace some kind of environmental policies and procedures within their corporations and their political views, we've seen hard right-wing politicians who are suddenly starting to turn the corner and admit that perhaps there's something to this, warming up the planet stuff, and that there's something that we all need to be paying attention to here. The fact that they're willing to do that is only because they see the penalties for not. And I don't mean penalties in terms of the climate. I mean penalties in terms of what they are concerned with, which is votes or dollars.
Customers, yeah. No, that makes sense. But I mean, in terms of the sort of, is it possible to regionalize values within a country? And obviously at the other end of things, I mean, can you globalize? Is there any core value that you would say the entire planet shares?
Well, we're 8 billion people now, something like that. And the fact that there's only 56 things that drive all of our behaviors, emotions, feelings, and decisions, I think that's pretty remarkable. We are so similar to each other, 8 billion of us, and there's only 56 variables at play. That's pretty remarkable. So yeah, from one region to another, things are different. From one brand to another, things are different. Think of it this way. There's about the same number of keys on a piano as there are values that are creating our world. All of our human actions and behaviors and decisions and emotions, everything we do as a species is coming from these same keys on the keyboard. So there's all kinds of different music you can play, but it's still, you're using the same keyboard. You aren't having to go and jump on some other crazy system of strings over there or start using trumpets or whatever. It's the same 56 notes that make all the music of our lives. That's a pretty amazing thing to me. Now, the specificity is incredible. Given my roots in the real estate development world, when we first started doing this, many of my clients were real estate developers because that's who I knew. And so we'd have a guy in one city building a big giant fancy condo tower, and 20-minute drive away, another guy building a big fancy condo tower. And they're both targeting demographically the same group of people. And they would say, well, what can you tell us? And so we'd go out and do our methodology and find the people who are attracted to this, and then extrapolate their information out of our benchmark data set and do the same thing for this tower over here and extrapolate the profiles from our benchmark data set. And these two towers, which have so many things in common, would have drastically different valuegraphic profiles. They're only a few blocks away from each other. But because of location, perception of that neighborhood, proximity to a park, what are the amenity sets that are going into the building? What's the price point? All kinds of other variables. a group of people would be attracted to that because of some shared values, and a group of people would be attracted to this because of some shared values. And once you know what those are, as a real estate developer, and you can swap out brand manager or advertising agency here, once you know what is different between these two, you just double down on the stuff that's working. So
Right.
if health and fitness, health and well-being is the big thing over here, then you put all your money into making a great gym and, making sure the air filtration systems are amazing and all that kind of stuff. And over here, that's not as important. What's more important is status and social growth, or social standing and ambition. Well, cool. You take all that money out of all that health and fitness stuff and you put marble floors and gold leaf on the ceiling, and you suddenly don't have to guess at that stuff. You can just go, okay, I can't tell you how to execute on ambition and social standing. You guys got to figure that out. I can't tell you how to execute on health and well-being. You guys got to figure that out. But I can tell you those are the things you got to figure out, not the other way around, or some other thing that is maybe on the table.
But you're leading with the values. I mean, that's the whole point to it, is that is what's sort of driving the nuances, the sort of, it's almost a localization, but by values rather than by sort of regionality or by geography.
Let me give you an example. So we did this work with a company that was starting a new property management division. So they're going to be managing apartment towers for renters, and they built their whole platform, how they interact with the tenants, how they recruit the tenants, how they look after problems that arise in the building, how the custodians behave, how they're hired. Everything was built on a core set of values that the Valuegraphics database identified for people who rent their homes in these towers. And they launched this in the middle of COVID, and all the metrics started to behave in exactly the way they wanted. People were happier. They weren't leaving as much. And the apartment business, churn is the thing you want to avoid. They were getting higher rents per square foot than all their competitors in the market. But here's the remarkable piece. They started getting unsolicited fan mail. Now think about that. Who writes thank you letters to their property manager? I mean, generally it's the inverse. You guys suck. Oh my God, my toilet's been leaking for the They're getting letters saying, if this is what it's like to live in a building that you guys manage, I'm never living anywhere else. And it wasn't just one or two. There was a bunch of them that they kept sharing with me. It just made my heart grow 3 sizes bigger to see how happy we had made these people, because this company had listened to what they care about and then given them that. Seems like such common sense.
That's amazing. That's nice. And, obviously something that's a bit of a surprise to you. But I mean, what in all of you're obviously logging all these stats and finding surprises sort of as you go along. What's been the biggest surprise you've learned about the human race, or about, the people, since you started doing this?
Well, there's a warm motherhood and apple pie answer I'll give you, which is that there's 5 values in those 56 that we call the togetherness values. And no matter what we're doing as a profile, we're working with Wall Street hedge funds, we work with the United Nations, with the Environmental Defense Fund, with consumer packaged goods, with travel, it doesn't matter, whatever industry sector we're in, B2B, B2C, always in every profile, some of those togetherness values show up, because more than anything, human beings everywhere want to be with each other. We want to do that in slightly different ways. For some of us, it's more about friends, others it's more about family, others it's more about community. But we have yet to find a profile where being with other people is not included in the top 10 for that particular target audience. And I think that's a lovely thing. And it makes me hopeful for the recovery of so many of the industries that are struggling right now. We want to be with each other again. And we have the data to prove it. Now, there's also kooky stuff that comes up. We see, for example, what's a good one? Loyalists. There's a lot of different flavors of loyalty. This was kind of a weird thing, and we keep seeing this confirmed in many sectors. So it's one thing to find a profile of people for whom loyalty is a very important thing. But then when we dig a little deeper and we're talking about custom Valuegraphics profiles now. So we see that loyalty is rooted in even, I just call it flavors. So we can be loyal to things, we can be loyal to people, And we can be loyal to things or people because they have earned it, or because it's just what we do. We found one group of people who are employees in retirement care homes. And they broke up into 3 different kinds of loyalists. There were loyalists there who were loyalists because folks had earned it. And this is my role in life. These people have earned it. These oldies here, they've earned it. And I'm here to make sure that they're getting what's due to them, which is some loyalty. And there was another group of people who were loyal because, why are you asking me this question? What a stupid thing to ask. We're loyal because it's what we do. Like, loyalty is just being human. So can I get back to my job now? That was the other kind of loyalty. And then the third kind of loyalty was the most remarkable one. It was loyalty to experiences. And in this case, the experiences were manifest by, these are the ones who want to listen to the old timers tell stories. And they couldn't wait to get up and go to work every day and hear some more stories. They're the ones who sit patiently while, the 102-year-old talks about what it was like back in the day in the old country. And they just think that's the most amazing thing in the world. And so they were loyal to the experiences that they were being given by this particular field of employment.
Wow.
So to see loyalty break out like that. Now you can imagine if you're in HR, or your job is to recruit people into that industry, or figure out how to put people into various roles once they come into that industry. The ones who are doing it out of respect because it's been earned, those ones want to be with the folks who need it the most. So they're going to be happiest and most fulfilled, and their values will be most in alignment if they're in the ICU units with the people who really need them. And then the story listeners, the loyalty to experience people, they're going to want to be there with the folks who want to talk a lot. They're going to want to be running those kinds of programs and involved in those kinds of wards with those kinds of people. And then the last group who are just the shut up and it's just what we do. What are you talking about? They're a little more flexible. You can kind of put them in all kinds of different places. Their biggest value is family. They want to just get home to their families because they're loyal to their families. But yeah, so there's always new things we're learning about these values. So there's only 56, but they all start splitting off into subgroups and different flavors and different slight, variations and nuances, which as an ex-copywriter, it's just so meaty. It's so like, oh my God, I could do so much with this, but that's not my job. My job is to say, you lucky devil copywriter, here you go. This is what I got for you.
Well, one of your jobs, or part of your job, is to obviously be the ambassador for Valuegraphics, and the big $64,000 question. Obviously, if money is one of your values, if I have an advertising, PR, marketing, digital, social media agency, etc., I mean, what's the killer argument for them to be using Valuegraphics?
It's 8 times more effective than Demographics and Psychographics, and we have the stats, which I can go into a long story about, or we can just, if somebody wants to know, connect with me and I'll give you all the math on that. It's 8 times more effective.
Wow. And so, I mean, what's your ambition for the company over the next sort of few years?
I want to change the way everybody looks at the world. I want to convince everyone it's time to discard these ancient ideas about demographics helping us understand people. Demographics are still a great way to describe people, but they're a terrible way to understand each other. And it's the root of so many problems on our planet. So I kind of look at our work with corporations as a Trojan horse, because every corporation we convert is out talking to sometimes millions of customers.
Right.
So if we can get millions of customers engaged around values, and corporations all over the planet starting to use values as a way to look at their customers, then I think that's the fastest way to just get the planet on side, because there's a financial incentive built in. Corporations will make more money, so they should be excited about embracing a values-driven view of the world.
It just makes perfect sense. I mean, the more I've listened to you talk about it, and I know we had a call a few weeks ago talking about it as well, but it just makes so much more sense than just the traditional, white collar you know, or working class, and those are your two sort of divisions, or based upon the kind of property that you own and stuff. So I mean, it does make a lot more sense. So you know, I hope that that any agencies listening to this will at least you know, sort of cock an ear in this direction, and maybe take you up on the proposition, and at least buy the book. I mean, you know,
there's that. And I've even better, if you go to my website, which is weirdly valuegraphics.com, there's a news section there. You might call it a blog, but we continually post free reports. Now, we're doing it because we want people to get engaged and excited, but even just these industry-wide reports, like there's one in there on the restaurant industry, there's one on the hotel industry, there's one on just general recovery after the pandemic. There's dozens of different topics that we've gone and done an industry-wide report, and we just share it. So if anybody finds anything in there or on my LinkedIn feed that they think is interesting, because we're constantly just pushing this stuff out, get in touch. We'll give you the full report. It's as important to us that people are using this stuff as it is that we get paid by brands and by customers who want to know their specific version of this stuff. So the more folks who are willing to grab the free stuff that we're throwing out there and run with it, the happier we are.
Fantastic. Well, you can't say fairer than that, David, can you?
I hope not. I hope we're trying.
Fair enough. Okay, so now you're broadcasting from your hideaway sort of cabin up in the north of the country now.
Yeah, and if you need any proof, look, here's an antler.
My God, there you go. Fantastic. And so, how do you relax when you're not sort of counting data?
You know, this place is a fairly new acquisition. Some people during COVID went and bought a dog. Well, we bought a cottage. So just, you know, I think we win. we win the stupidity award. It's been an amazing, relaxing thing. It needs so much work, and as you know, downtown condo dwellers suddenly we're like, well, wait a minute, there isn't a property manager. Like, no, we're the property manager. We got to empty the eaves troughs and rake the lawn and do it. So we're learning all about that stuff. Two city boys like confronted with a lawnmower, going, what's this thing? So that's been quite relaxing. But I'll tell you what my real passion is.
Are you off grid?
Sorry?
Are you off grid?
No, it's actually, okay, so I'm going to fess up here. It's a little town up the coast from Vancouver. It's called Seashelt. And it's a little fishing village that is sort of like maybe what Martha's Vineyard was before it became Martha's Vineyard, in quotes. So it's a little charming town. And this house we bought is 100 years old. It's a little old summer cottage, but the town grew up around it. So out my front door is an amazing bakery, a great charcuterie store, a great wine store, and one block that way is the beach. So
what more do you need?
Yeah, I mean, the place has fallen down around us. The back fence fell over last month. We haven't figured out how to prop that back up yet, but there's wine down the street and great charcuterie. So
I'm bread and cured meat. What else do you need?
Exactly.
Fantastic. Well, when you are unwinding, I've got three very important questions.
Yeah.
More important.
So unwinding for me is lifting weights. I go to the gym. It's like a meditative practice. When you're lifting weights, repetitively picking things up and putting them down again, that's all you can think about. The emails disappear, the to-do lists, the data all disappears, and you're in your physical self. It's like, for some people, it's going to yoga, you know, for others, it's going to church. For me, it's just focusing on something physical for an hour every day.
Pumping iron.
Really, really grounds me.
Fantastic. And one of the important questions that we do like to ask is that is there a favorite piece of music that you would work out along to, or shut the Queen up if she began? Because she's part of your ownership, isn't she? She's
absolutely
the old Queen.
God save the Queen. We love the royal family over here.
So a piece of music. So what would you shut her up to listen to a piece of music for?
It would have to be a pretty special piece of music, because she's on my fantasy dinner party guest list. So it would be, I have such a wide ranging taste in music. I love everything from hardcore medieval classical music to Baroque to opera to country and Western, the good stuff, to pop music. I don't know. At the moment, I've been listening to a lot of old classic jazz, Billie Holiday, the old greats, Louis Armstrong on the trumpet. I mean, there's just like no better expression of human emotion than that man on a trumpet. It's crazy. So for me, it's about quality. The genre doesn't really matter so much. If it's great and it's like getting in here, then it's a good thing.
Well, I'm going to play you out with a track. So what would you choose?
Some Louis Armstrong trumpet piece. So let's say, I don't know, pick one. You decide.
I will. I'll pick one for you. Okay, that's great. And apart from your own, obviously, which you do have a book coming out, and you have several already on the shelf, but we asked for a contribution to the Zoom bookshelf that sits behind us all now. So what book has been pivotal? It doesn't have to be a business book. It could be any kind of book.
Okay, this sounds a little name droppy, but one of my best friends is a writer, and he is so good. Everything he does just makes my mind melt. His last book of short stories is called Bit Rot, and I would highly recommend that everybody read this book. His name's Douglas Copeland. There's the little name droppy piece. But Doug Copeland's last book of short stories, Bit Rot, is I think one of his strongest pieces of writing he's ever done.
Wow. Okay. Not familiar with him, but so it's Douglas Copeland.
Oh, Douglas Copeland wrote Generation X. That's the piece that triggers everybody and goes, oh, that guy. Yeah. So he's a phenomenal writer, and so many best-selling books over the last couple of decades. And Generation X was kind of the book where his, as he says, that's when my ship came in. But he's been at it for a long time. He's also a brilliant visual artist. So Doug's work is collected by museums all over the world, and his writing is, award-winning, #1 bestsellers year after year after year, translated into multiple languages. He's a mentor. He's a friend. I'm very, very privileged to have him in my life.
Well, I hope he's listening to this, because that's a hell of an advert you've just given him.
Yeah, I hope so too. Hi, Doug.
Fantastic. Okay, and the final question, which is the fun one. You're probably familiar with the geographical location tool of What 3 Words, which uses obviously 3 random words to identify any location. So, if you were a location, what 3 words would identify you?
Well, I'm going to have to say curious. Mm-hmm. For all kinds of obvious reasons. I'm going to say collector. I'm a ferocious collector of all kinds of things. And then I don't know, back when I had staff, they used to always tell me I was intimidating. I don't get it. I don't think I'm intimidating, but I heard that a lot. So I'm going to say curious, collector, intimidating.
Okay.
With a nod to my past staff.
Now I'm scared. Well, looking at those antlers behind you, I think they found you quite intimidating. Fantastic.
By the way, I'm not a hunter. These are from eBay.
Oh, right. Okay. Now you tell me. Well, with that Swiss Army knife, you could do some damage. Fantastic. David, listen, thank you very much indeed. You've been super informative. And if people want to get hold of you, what's the easiest way to check you out?
Jump onto valuegraphics.com. Love to hear from you. We always love talking to people about this stuff for reasons we've already gone over. And I'm on most social media channels, but the one I tend to live on the most is LinkedIn. So you can find me on LinkedIn or at valuegraphics.com. And I'd love to hear from you.
Lovely. That's great, David. Thank you very much indeed. Really good, very useful stuff, and clearly something that every agency needs to be on top of. I can immediately think of 3 or 4 different agencies that need to be using Valuegraphics. So, but that's fantastic stuff, and I look forward to hearing more about the company as it grows. And anything I can do, obviously, just give us a call, and we'll be able to help. But fantastic, David. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you putting the time aside, and hopefully I'll speak to you really soon. All the best.
I look forward to that. Thank you so much.
Take care.
Everybody.
Bye-bye.